Hello, everybody. This is the session number 7, Peace Processes and Opportunities in the Middle East. I'm the chair of the panel, Michael Lasker. I'll introduce myself when I give my own lecture and we'll do it very briefly. We have two distinguished presenters. One is Dr. Moshe Elad, who will be the first speaker, who will speak on the chances of normalization between countries in the Middle East. Dr. Moshe Elad is a researcher and a lecturer at the Western Galilee College. Prior to that, he served in several senior capacities at Israel's Defense Forces at the rank of colonel. Dr. Elad's special areas of interest is the Middle Eastern arena, Israel and the Palestinians, and Lebanon. Dr. Elad, I give you the floor.
Thank you. Is my presentation on? Because I shared it. Do you want me to do it once again?
תעשה שיתוף מהמסך, כן.
Okay. Is it okay now?
לעשות stop share? Okay. Okay.
Okay. Can we go on?
No. It was there and it disappeared. I wonder what happened.
Okay. Now it's okay?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Oh, great. Thank you. Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming. Welcome. If there anybody speaks Arabic, ahlan wa sahlan fikum jami'an. The chances or the prospects of normalization is between countries in the Middle East is like the second part of what I spoke yesterday about the conflicts. Now, these were the bad guys. Now we are going to the good guys and just try to see what can be the outcome of what's going on in this region. In any case, recent developments in the Middle East show major, from my point of view, and positive, by the way. Today, I would like to be very positive changes in the area. For example, 4 Arab countries, the United Arab Emirates, UAE, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco, have established or are in process of establishing diplomatic relations with Israel. Other Arab and Muslim countries are reportedly considering following them. As of now, these reconciliation movements are advancing with the speed of an iceberg, and it is still too early to set off the fireworks in celebration, but it is possible that they are enough to reflect a new trend, which is very, by the way, very positive. We would like to know what is the normalization, because we have many definitions and many formulas, and I would like to give you my opinion about that. Originally, it described a return to a state considered normal. Later, it was used to describe the act of making something variable conform to a standard. Recently, we have seen it used to describe a change in what's considered standard. And this is why there are different prospects of how to do that and how to think about that. But if we take what happened in the past as a model, in politics and diplomacy normalization, it means processes of establishing normal diplomatic relations between 2 or more countries. For example, if 2 countries normalize relation, it means that they have a friendly relationship again after a war, or if you want, a disagreement sometimes. Let's take some examples. USA and Japan, especially after Pearl Harbor, yeah? And the war, of course. USA and Vietnam after the bloody, vicious war of the 60s. Of course, Israel and Egypt after a few wars, and Israel and Jordan. Egypt, it's almost from 79, Jordan from 94, a lot of time. And if you take a look, you see most reconciliation processes ended with some special event in Washington, D.C. Anyway, in September 15 to 2020, in Washington, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, UAE Foreign Minister Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan, and US President Donald Trump signed, quote, a treaty of peace, diplomatic relation, and full normalization, end quote. On the same day, Netanyahu and Bahrain Foreign Minister Abdul Latif Zayani and, of course, Trump signed another quote, declaration of peace, cooperation, and constructive diplomatic friendly relation. Actually, it's the same, but why it's different, that's another story. The three countries also signed the more general so-called Abraham Accords Declaration. So what's the difference? There is a difference. And here's the desired implementation of a normalization process. What actually we are looking to have. These agreements were followed by rapidly substantive negotiation on bilateral issues. Again, substantive negotiation bilateral and on bilateral issues. Now, what actually happened? Direct flights were quickly instituted. Israeli flocked to Dubai, and businessmen and academics from both sides immediately began to collaborate. And you ask yourself how it came out, how such a normalization can come out. And let me give you my explanation as I understand that, okay? Normalization with the two Gulf states, Emirates and Bahrain, was a result of improvement in bilateral security and political and economic relations with Israel over the past decade, yes, over the past decade. And there are shared interests. The decisions were based on shared interest, checking Iran influence, which is very important. Both are being afraid of what's going on in Iran. Afraid probably is not the word, but concerned, as well as Turkey and Muslim Brotherhood in the region in creating a regional alignment to compensate for a diminished US appetite for engagement. America, the policeman of the world, is disappearing, folks. This is true. You saw it now in Afghanistan, and it is very, very sad. So what are we going to do? Let's join forces. Israel, others will take care and see what they can do together. So normalization with the UAE, the Emirate, also led to Israel suspending plans. We paid the price to annex the Jordan Valley and the West Bank settlements. Everything was promised by Netanyahu by 2020 with the elections, and he had definitely to suspend it, and according to Trump peace plan. So the normalization process was vigorously encouraged and rewarded by Trump, the administration, and especially by Jared Kushner, his advisor and son-in-law. I know that Professor Lasker and Dr. Lior Ben-Dor, they will talk about Morocco, so I would probably minimize my insight about Morocco. I'll talk about Sudan probably. The currently incomplete deals with Sudan and Morocco were to a much greater extent. For example, bilateral issues between these two countries and the Trump administration, which presented normalization with Israel. This was an American demand. This was an American interest, not Israel. Always, when you have a normalization, you have to ask, what is the deal? What is the trade-off? so-called in formal language, quid pro quo. What are you willing to give and what are you willing to get? What is the exchange? So in this case, Israel in both cases was indifferent. It was largely American interest, absolutely. So with Sudan, Sudan was happy that its name will be taken off of the countries supporting terrorists. This was a list that America promised them. And Sudan did some in favor of this issue, this agreement. It allowed Israeli airplanes to fly over for a couple of months. I don't know if today it's still there. In any way, they had a meeting in February 2020 in Uganda. Netanyahu went to see Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, the general, and of course, they had a negotiation together with the American. And actually, all they did, they talked about, the region, but nothing was done. All was American. America promised Sudan to take its, and by the way, also Treasury Secretary of US, Steve Mnuchin, also was there and promised to Sudan a big support in dollars. So it was also all American. However, in Sudan case, there was, the candy, the sweetener that they got was the removal of long-standing of sponsors of terrorism list. And this was very, very important for the Sudanese. I would probably, about Morocco, say that they have sent Meir Ben Shabbat several times. Netanyahu hadn't met with them, but Ben Shabbat, and as far as I am concerned, they were talking that they had to apologize, the Moroccans, towards the Arab League and say, because there are a lot of criticizing there. So they were asked, how can you sign a peace agreement with Israel? And all they say, no, it's just renewal of an older agreement, number one. Number two, we have people living in Israel who are Moroccan and we have to stay in touch. And number three, we have a lot of real estate in Israel and they have here and we'll have to deal with that. Come on, this is not really the issue, but they had to apologize and to explain to the Arab League why Moroccans have this type of relationship. By the way, I'm leaving that of Morocco. I have a lot to say, but I know that you guys are gonna talk about that, so I leave it now. And by the way, also with Morocco, I just will touch it, the Sahara, the Western Sahara, it was a very big issue between Moroccans, Spain, America, so they got their candy also like the Sudanese. And here I would probably stop with Morocco. Two countries, Egypt and Jordan, are very well embarrassed and very frustrated from what's going on. Look, Jordan and Egypt, and they are United States and Israel, long-standing Arab allies. Now they feel marginalized. At the end of the third, they were at the front, of course. They feel very irrelevant. And this is, by the way, a speculation of the opposition in both countries. The opposition in both countries, which are basically people from the Muslim Brotherhood, are definitely controlling any type of cooperation and coordination with Israel. The two embassies in Amman and Cairo are strongholds. You don't have academics relationship like, at the beginning and some kind of trade, nothing. You can fight only hatred and suspicion and stuff like that. So now when you are having such a ceremony in the Middle East, why Israel has not put inside the story Jordan, and Egypt. There are two answers. One, Egypt and Jordan didn't want to be involved because this is not really a real ceremony for them. Number two, we have so many problems in the south and in the east, so they didn't want to have another one. So this is what they say. They were talking about, what they call it, concreted search for a paradigm bending, splashy development over the past year. They had enough, but all I can say now, Egypt and Jordan are very marginalized, very irrelevant for the moment. And it's a pity, you have to correct it. Any case, Saudi Arabia. People used to say around every place that Saudi Arabia will be the next country to have reconciliation or a type of agreement, normalization. So I think that this is a little bit too risky. Why? First of all, because those two guys, mostly the right one, MBS, they are committed to so-called to the initiating peace of 2002, which came and was named at the first, it was the Saudi Arabian initiative. Now, then after 2 years, it became the Arab initiative. So how can you expect a country, an Arab country that initiated the peace agreement to sign a separate peace agreement with Israel? MBS was asked several times and he said, no, we are committed to such an agreement. By the way, let me remind you what's written in the 2002 initiative. It means you have to withdraw for all areas, including the Golan Heights, including Jerusalem, including a place, and you'll be getting in reward a peace agreement with all Arab countries. This is the deal. Okay, especially the Golan Heights, yeah, that's the deal. In any case, Saudi Arabia, from my point of view, is now, even though is now out of the question. We had a clandestine visit of Netanyahu to the new city now in Saudi Arabia. We had Pompeo with his people, where the Mossad head going there, but actually nothing happened on the ground, except, of course, again, the flights over Saudi Arabia and so on, which is a very big achievement, but it's not a full normalization as we expected. We have also Turkey. Yeah, Turkey is trying to find something in the region, I don't know. Let me just remind you that in the 50s, the 60s, there was a special agreement, or I would say treaty, between 3 countries in the Middle East, Israel, Turkey, and Iran. Yeah, Iran of the Shah. Where are they today? All 3 of them. They were going to face at that time to avert a catastrophe from the Muslim world at that time. And today we can also only laugh and say what days they were. In any case, Turkey has been signaling, despite criticism, that they are willing to get in, and they send messages to Biden, to the new administration. Ankara said to Biden, yes, we would like to be on this side, not necessarily Erdogan, but his people told that they want to be in the region. They want to be involved in the gas forum of the Mediterranean. There is a bonanza here in this area, and they would like to be a part of it. So also Turkey is inside. Who is next? I would say Syria is next. Yeah, you can laugh and say, well, yeah, Syria is next, maybe, because they would like to see whether or not they would have a possibility to get back to the Arab world. You know, the UAE and Bahrain reopened their embassies in Damascus and sending poor Bashar Assad a lot of money in order to reconstruct his infrastructures. Yes, So maybe they will be able to say a word about that. Indonesia, look, they are about 267 million resident Muslims, most of them, 86%. By the way, in 94, 95, when I was the governor of Bethlehem, they started sending worshippers to Jerusalem. I was, at that time, preparing a tourist city in Bethlehem. But it stopped because they said, well, you have now peace with the Palestinians, the Oslo, so let's start now normalizing. But at some point they stopped and they returned to Indonesia. And that was a short reconciliation. But it's very important to have them on the ground because they are representing today 1.8 billion people, Muslims. They are the head of 57 member states of the Arab world, what's so-called Organization of Islamic Cooperation. So it's extremely important to have Indonesia. And I know that I heard that the CEO of the US International Development Finance Corporation, somebody by the name of Adam Buehler, said that the United States could increase its development aid to Indonesia by 1 to 2 billion more annually. And they would like to try and get Indonesia on the track to plan to normalize relations with Israel. So we have a very important player in this region. Qatar, by the way, is for, we have relations with Qatar, but not, we have not normalized. Next year, they will have the Mondial. Let's see if they will let Israelis get in. I believe yes. What I'm saying is, Qatar would like, first of all, to get back to the Arab world. It's not just between Israel and others. It's also between Qatar, between inside the Arab world. Qatar is the first one. They would like to go back to the hands of the Saudi Arabian, the Bahrainis, and the Emirates, and so on. Today, Qatar is isolated, and reconciliation, and the normalization atmosphere, they would like also to breathe it, to feel it. And this is why they are doing it nowadays. And lastly, what I would like to say, of course, by the way, this gentleman, the Emir of Qatar, Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, I had the privilege, I don't know, to share with him. I met him at Harvard University when I studied there in 1995, and he was one of the students, and he knows a lot about Israel. I made sure that he will know. So I hope so that in his time, he's a very nice guy as a student, he will be able to open his arms and get Israel inside. Again, we have some offices there, but it should be a full reconciliation. So who else also we have in mind? Arif Alvi, Pakistan president, the Oman Sultan, Haytham bin Tariq Taimur, and the Bangladesh president, Muhammad Abdul Hamid, and Muhyiddin Yassin, the president, the prime minister of Malaysia. Look at the numbers of Muslims living in those countries, except Oman, which is a small country. Others are huge countries in terms of Muslim world, and we have to bring them on track. Finally, what I would like to say, a few words for just to sum it up, because Professor Lasker told me not to be over the 30 minutes. Whether all this positioning will help the Middle East actors with the new, I don't know, Biden administration, and whether the new US administration will affirm all of the undertakings that were in Trump's time, I'm not sure, okay? his predecessor was not such a love story between the two. It remains still to be seen. We don't know. From the perspective of Israel normalization in the region, of course, no doubt about that. Substantial momentum may be lost in the next few months as the new administration settles in. We see it right now. And it might develop some problems. The policies, the regional actors wait. Everybody's waiting to see, hello, President Biden, where are you going to? And this momentum, folks, may be extremely hard to regain. People who are in the region, politicians, diplomats will say, you cannot regain it immediately. You have to work very hard. I know we have the problem with Iran and others, but those who care about reconciliation and normalization should be aware that there could be a long wait for the next formal normalization. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Moshe, for your eloquent presentation.